So people are always asking me, hey Steve, what is the best release or hand action? How would you describe that perfect hand action that Mike Austin was talking about and a lot of the guys on TV use to hit the ball so long and straight? And really the answer is it depends. Depends on a couple of very large factors. Let's get into those other factors so you can determine the best release for you right after this. Hey, don't forget to watch all the way to the end for your chance to win this week's free video swing analysis. Good luck. Okay, so the two primary factors that will affect the style of your release are going to be number one, your club path, and number two, the path of your handle or the mid-hands point right here, the route in space that it travels through the impact zone. So let's cover the easy one first, the path part of it. So what you need to understand there is, if you swing in to out, the way it kind of works is for every 2 degrees you swing in to out, you're going to have to close the face to the path 1 degree in order to get the ball to curve back to center or hook back to center. The same thing would be with a slice. So for example, if I were to swing 4 degrees into out, something like this, I would have to introduce this type of torque, this shaft spinning torque. Otherwise, I would leave the ball out in right field as a straight push. So if I push path 4 degrees, I would have to rotate the shaft this way around itself about 2 degrees to get it to be 2 degrees closed relative to that path and get it to draw back again. So that, of course, will require a hand action that where the right hand closes and turns over and turns that toe over just a little bit like this. Of course, it's a pretty shot, but you can see over the long run how that club is not tracking square to the arc for very long. And so timing over the long term, especially at higher club head speeds, could tend to be a little temperamental. Now with an outside in path, say that of Dustin Johnson or Jack Nicklaus, those would be two really good examples of players who played off a slightly outside to in path, you would have to keep the shaft from rotating. In other words, you would have to make sure that the face stays slightly open to the path that it's traveling on, which means that your right hand or right forearm would feel like they stay underneath through the impact zone instead of rolling over the top, rolling the toe. So something like this, if I'm playing outside to in, that my right forearm is going to stay skywards, right palm skywards, as I flap through this way and around outside to in a little bit, so I can still get power, but I can keep the toe from squaring up with the heel and then therefore get a little bit of fade that will bring the ball back to center again. Now, both of those styles are perfectly valid as long as you don't go off the deep end. I'd say as long as you can keep your path within 2 or 3 degrees of neutral and not get outside of that, I think you can play some really good golf. But once your path gets outside of that number, let's say your path gets 8 to 10 degrees into out this way, now you're starting to introduce so much shaft roll this way and toe roll in order to get the ball to draw back again that you're really going to have a hard time hitting 3 consecutive shots that are shaped the same. Okay, let's talk about some variations in hand path. The easy one being the super duper shallow or horizontal, more horizontal style hand path. Something like this. So I'm really shallow in the slot, turn the corner very quickly with the handle and exit very low and around to the left again. You could call that more of a horizontal hand path. Now that hand path is not going to require very much roll of the shaft at all. So again, you're going to be back to that kind of neutral flap that gets the club face really tracking along the arc. It does a very good job of this. You might look at a swing like, like Lee Trevino, for example, had an incredibly shallow hand path. Now the way we adapt to that shallow hand path is by sticking the rear end way back through the impact zone and keeping lots of extra hip flexion. You can see this a little bit in Hogan too as he goes into impact, how he kind of flexes the knees a little bit, sticks the butt back, and that way he can really get that shallow hand path to intersect with the turf like it should. Now with a more vertical hand path, so let's say you have a swing that looks more like this, way up here, you might even hump it a little bit and you're coming down much more vertically. Okay, well in this case, you're not going to get the same kind of squaring force or kick to the club head because of the shape of the handle. So if we go back to our water ski boat analogy, and let's put the club on a neutral path or a neutral hand path, kind of like you might see Tiger Woods on. He's kind of medium. He's not too vertical, he's not too horizontal, he's kind of in the middle. When his handle turns the corner around him, we're getting that kick out. That water skier is catching up and passing the boat as the handle turns the corner, just like that. So that's ideal. We would need to add almost no extra squaring force with this. But now let's compare that to the super steep or vertical. A lot of over-the-toppers, a lot of beginners are on this. A lot of people who struggle hitting the ball straight, their hand path is too steep. They might go back okay, but then they're going to go vertical. They're coming down kind of vertical like this. Now when that happens and your hand path is steeper, more vertical than it should be, well, instead of this nice kick out squaring the face, well, the kick is going to be more up like this. So it's going to kick the head around and speed it up for sure. But you can see the problem is we're going to have a very open face. Now, of course, you're rarely going to see anybody swing perfectly like a Ferris wheel, but let's set it at 70 degrees. You're still going to see, you're going to need a lot of help at the bottom squaring that face. And so you would have to add some of the hand roll here to square it up. And now that will keep you out of right field and blocking it, which is what steeper hand paths tend to do, is kind of slice it or block it. But of course, again, you bring in that long-term temperamental blocky hooky, sometimes straight, but usually not, pattern into your game. So this is why getting shallower and exiting around to the left correctly is so important. To get that hand path close to a really good track, not only will it keep your path within reason, like I mentioned first, but also we're going to get a good acceleration to square the face off of this counter leverage move as the handle turns the corner like this. So ideally, and this is what Mike Austin advocated for, is a club face that comes in square to the arc. Like right here, it looks like I can not screw up. And then therefore, since I'm already square to the arc, I don't need to add anything extra. And here we go, staying close to the left pocket as the club arcs. And you can see that club face is kind of pointing up still like this. If you were flipping the club more, it would result in a look more like this, or even this, if it's really bad. And of course, then you've got the one last issue on the hand path, and that would also result in a necessary evil to at least temporarily square the face up. We have the category of the handle stuck hand path. So if I was to come down and my arm separates out away, and I don't pull it back to the close to the back pocket, you're going to end up with this look coming down at last parallel where the club head is stuck inside the handle. Now from here, you know, Cam Smith works it out. He's a little bit stuck right there, but he works it out by really getting the handle to turn the corner at the last minute. But he's unique. He's that one guy who's figured it out. Most people end up stuck on the mini tour for 10 years who try to do that. So when you're like this, generally what happens is that person's not pulling it back in like Cam, but they're turning the corner late and too slow, and they're ending up at impact like this in a blocky position with the face open. Of course, that's going to make the ball go right, and typically you'll then have an exit that looks more like this, where it's out to right field and flipped over a lot more. And of course, that can also introduce those big hooks to the left potentially. So then you have that Army golf pattern, right, left, right, left. On a good day, you might put it down the middle for 9 holes, but then you might fall apart on the back 9. That's kind of how that pattern works. So if you're that kind of golfer who does 3 or 4 holes in a row really nicely, going along even up to 9 holes, and then goes through stretches where they hit the ball terribly crooked, well, this is going to be the place where you first look at it, because your club face must be going through impact much too temperamentally, probably because there's issues with the hand path. All right, let's see if I can hit one with a nice shallow and around to the left hand path. We'll look at it in slow-mo. All right, so I'd give myself about a B on this one. I can see that I need more improvement in getting the hand path closer to the right pocket, around the corner to the left, so I can see a little bit extra toe roll in there. Now, while that shot was dead straight, right on the target line with good power, I wouldn't expect to be able to do that day after day after day, especially under more pressure. All right, so keep in mind that the release you use, you will need to figure out which one fits best that will match up to your club's path and your hand path. Now, there are a lot of variations that will work just fine up until a point, but when you're really ready to play great golf, then you'll want to get on that more shallow hand path coming around to the left, and that release would be more of a neutral flap of the right wrist. Let me show you from the face-on angle. I'm coming from shallow in the slot, hand turns the corner. Now watch this hand action here. Square to the arc, I'm flapping both hands, but I am not rolling the shaft toe over like that. So I've got enough squaring force as the handle turns the corner. I got enough squaring force. I don't need to spin the shaft, and now that club comes in shallow, sweepy, square to the arc, applying power by flapping, and exit looks more like this. From the down the line view, as I come around the corner, again, no extra roll of the toe. I come very close to this left pocket within about a hand span, and then it's going to come out kind of looking like that, with the club face doing a little bit of pointing back at the camera. Now, my mentor Mike Austin, if you've been studying him, I don't want you to listen to how he describes the swing, because that's not what he did in his heyday. Watch the old black and white and the early color from the early 70s, and you can see he's doing precisely what I'm describing here. Now, the older Austin of the late 80s and into the 90s describes the swing verbally in a different way, which may lead you to believe that there is a lot of this going on. And you know what? The forearm eventually works itself over. Right here, see that? My right forearm does work itself over way in the follow through, but you may not think that listening to him talk about it. All right, hopefully this illuminates how the release relates to the hand path and the club path, and you're able to match up style so you can hit it longer and straighter. Hey, I'm Steve, thanks for watching, and as usual, I'll either see you in the next video or I'll see you longer and straighter down the fairway. Everybody take good care.